Welcome back, everyone. More people will soon qualify to apply for Social Security. Starting September 13th, a public assistance household will include those receiving SNAP payments. It will also include households with at least one SSI recipient and at least one other household member who receives public income maintenance. The expanded definition will not only help more people to qualify, but it will also increase payment amounts for some SSI recipients. U.S. regulators are warning that the mortgage industry could intensify the next recession. The Financial Stability Oversight Council says non-bank mortgage companies like Rocket Mortgage and Mr. Cooper have an increasing influence in the industry. Unlike traditional banks, these companies aren't heavily regulated and are vulnerable in swings in the market. They also don't have the stable deposits to rely on as a safety net either. Federal regulators are calling on states and Congress to address the risk. Well, everyone is getting hit hard by inflation, but it's reportedly worse for Gen Z. It looked at the credit usage of Americans between the ages of 22 to 24 years old and found that they're earning less money, have more debt, and higher rates of delinquency compared to millennials when they were that age. Not only have Gen Zers had to deal with the economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic early on in their careers, but also sticky inflation that has driven up the cost of basic necessities like food and gas. The iconic Porsche 911 is going hybrid. Its gas engine will be assisted by at least one battery-powered electric motor. Porsche is set to officially unveil the 911 Hybrid in an online event on May 28th. The company already sells plug-in hybrid vehicles, but this is another matter entirely because the 911 defines the Porsche brand and is one of the most recognizable sports cars in the world. Stay with us, everyone. Summer will be back with one last check of your weather planner after the break.